Story time about how I flew 8 hours away to meet a famous guy who eventually ghosted me. I might give you a clue about who this person is in part 3. Disclaimer's not my story time, send me on Instagram. Back in 2020 when all our lives were falling apart, I was really bored. So I decided to get on Instagram and DM some of my celebrity crushes and celebrity influencers slash YouTubers, Instagrammers, whatever you want to call them. I never ever expected to get a response. But in fact, I got a couple of responses. One of them being my biggest celebrity crushes. Fortunately, all he wanted was to, do the dirty. And he asked me out right away, but I wasn't comfortable, so I said no. Because I said no, he decided to ghost me too. But then a couple of weeks later, I got a response from one of the influencers. And right away, he asked me out too. He said he wanted to go out for lunch or dinner. But here's the thing, I live on the East Coast, he lives on the West Coast. When I told him this, he actually offered to buy me a ticket to fly out the very next day. I made up an excuse as to why I couldn't go. I told him that I had to work. And he told me that he would pay me to go over there so that I wouldn't lose out on my money. I thought about it for 2 days and I eventually said yes. Am I dumb? Absolutely. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I flew 8 hours to meet a famous guy who eventually ghosted me. I will give you a clue of who it is in part 3. Disclaimers not my story time, was letting me on Instagram. He offered to give me the money that I would have made at work and fly me out there. Thought about it and I said yes. By the way, I'm 24 years old. I didn't even tell my parents that I was gonna do this. Made up this whole story about how I won a giveaway and I was needing to fly out the very next day. But here's the thing. The influencer asked me if I could put the flight on my credit card. That once I arrived to LA, he would give me the cash in person. God, how could I be so stupid? I packed my bags and chose my best outfits. Even went to the salon and got my hair done and refreshed my eyelash extensions. So I spent like $400 that day to get ready to go. I called my job and told them that I was sick and that I wouldn't be able to go to work for a week. And the very next morning I got on the flight, which happened to be delayed. So my whole travel time was about 9 hours. We did exchange numbers, so I texted him when I landed. He messages me back saying, awesome, let me know when you're in the Uber, which he had told me that he was gonna go pick me up. Gave me an address which I assumed was his house. But when I showed up, it was a party, like an influencer party, and he wasn't there. Part 3 is story time about how I flew 8 hours to meet a famous guy who ended up ghosting me. I'm giving you guys a clue at the end. Disclaimer is not my story time, send me on Instagram. When I finally got to the address that he had sent me, I realized he wasn't there. It was an influencer party. Like influencers that I knew and I followed on Instagram. So I started going up to people and asking them if they had seen him. Finally, one person told me that they had seen him leave with another girl. Another girl. I was crushed. I went to the bathroom and cried for about 20 minutes. I composed myself and I called him and he didn't answer. I texted him and he didn't answer. Instead, I went to a fancy restaurant in Beverly Hills and I stayed at a nice hotel. I figured I might as well have a good time if I was there. Guess what though? He called me at 3 in the morning when I was asleep. Called him the next morning and he didn't answer. Here's your clue. He has a YouTube channel and used to have long hair. This man proceeded to ghost me for a full week. When I got back home, I sent him a message saying how disappointed I was. That's when he FaceTimes me and asked me to come back to LA. I asked him for the money for the ticket and he said he couldn't give it to me until he saw me in person. What should I do?
Am I wrong for refusing to help / support my dad's pregnant stepdaughter? I am a 21 female college student. My dad's stepdaughter is 18, turning 19 soon, and expecting a baby. She has no idea who the father is, and she's been left behind by her friends who are all in college after graduating last year. She never went and stayed living with my dad and her mom. Now she's pregnant, doesn't have a job, and isn't in school, but she's planning to go now. Which, I don't know. I don't believe that, but I know my dad wants to. I transferred and I now live about an hour away from my dad. Because I'm so much closer now, he wants me to help out with his stepdaughter, give her a place to stay some nights so she can get away from their house, maybe be a sister for her, offer to be an aunt to the baby. She and I have never gotten along, and I personally think she's a spoiled brat and I do not consider her family, even though by marriage she is. But we never treated each other like sisters and have never counted each other as such. She regrets that now. She told me as much. She realizes I have people in my life who would be there for me in a heartbeat, which she doesn't have outside her mom and my dad. I told my dad I wasn't interested, that I'm happy with my life the way it is and I don't trust her to follow through, nor do I care enough about her to reach out. It's the honest truth. I don't care if she does try or not. She's not important to me. It upset him because he wants more for her. He wants me to want this so badly, but she wasn't part of my life for as long as she was his. I was 15 when I moved in with him after my mom died, and before that I saw him a few weeks of the year. My dad was upset but not angry. His wife, however, thinks I'm a bad egg, to quote her. She said family helps each other. Wouldn't I want to help her? The answer to that is no, because I've seen what her help leads to. Do I not long for a sister that I never otherwise had? All this stuff. Then she talks about how the baby is special and important and I should cherish her. She told me only bad eggs refuse to help. What are you, a chicken? I might be wrong now, but I consider that her way of calling me an asshole, and I only entertained that idea because my dad is her. So, am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for calling out my friend after she sent inappropriate messages in a group chat? I'll try to keep this as short as possible. A few months ago, my friend, 27 female, was sending ass pictures and selfies in her bra to a group chat we made. This group chat mainly consisted of guys, so I understand why she would send those pictures. I always thought she was trying to get a certain someone's attention and didn't think too much of it. She's always been very comfortable with sharing her life, and I was just used to her behavior and self-expression. Well, one day, she started to send extremely detailed messages about her desires and talking about how he was. The guys didn't really say much besides replying with laughing emojis and making fun of her. The more they ignored and avoided her, the more explicit she got.
This is super interesting.
Finally, a couple of the guys, including my boyfriend, who's in the group chat, messaged me privately expressing how uncomfortable they were. Mind you, most of these guys are in relationships or married with kids.
What the hell is this girl doing?
They've never really had a problem with her self-expression before, since they usually always just ignored her. But the way she was expressing herself that night was more than enough to make them take a step back. So I took it upon myself to reply to her and say, hey, don't you have someone else to talk to this about? And she very quickly said no and continued to babble about the same things. Nope, move along. Then I messaged her privately and told her she was taking things too far and was making me and my boyfriend uncomfortable. I didn't want to throw everyone else under the bus and asked if she could stop or simply change the subject. She left me on read and left the group chat without saying anything else. We didn't speak for a few weeks after this, and when she finally called me and sort of just swept it under the rug, she asked, so is the group chat boring now that I'm gone? We all know I'm the only girl that made things fun in there, which obviously annoyed me since I was the only other girl in there.
You're kidding me. What the hell? Oh my God.
And it felt like a jab at me. It was, sweetie, it was.
I think a lot of these like pick me situations are kind of like could it be? But like
This one's clear.
very blatant.
I ignored her comment and just said things were normal and fine without her. We never touched the subject again. I was told by one of the guys that she was calling me a party pooper and that I should have been the one to leave since I was so uncomfortable, and that she can't help it that she's so sexy. Does it make me an asshole for setting boundaries? Should I have kept my mouth shut?
No, not at all. That is wild. Especially like if it was a group of, they were all single in there and it's just kind of like, they
That's
just,
one thing.
Yeah. And they just kind of like, you know, shoot the shit with each other, whatever. But the fact that they all are in relationships and she's just
Married with kids?
Yeah. And that she's just actively like screaming for attention.
Very clearly needs a hug or orgasm.
Am I the asshole for putting a private conversation on loudspeaker which cost my brother his 18-year relationship? To begin, my brother Ben, 39M fake name, has been in a relationship with Abby 39F fake name, for 18 years. They've been engaged 8 years and nearly got married 3 years ago, but months before the wedding Ben chickened out. They went to therapy and basically because our dad left us he has issues with commitment. We thought over the last year he was finally gonna step up for Abby and be the partner she deserves. He did seem a bit anxious leading up to the big day but assured everyone he was okay. Today they were meant to get married, but as Abby and us bridesmaids were about to enter the church, Ben was nowhere to be found. Everyone tried to calm her down saying it was traffic or he probably had a monster hangover. Well, an hour passed, then 2, then 3, and after the 4-hour mark Abby said fuck it, she was going back to the hotel and call her when he landed. My family looked panicked and nervous trying to get through to Ben or the groomsmen who had not arrived yet. My other brothers and brother-in-laws, sister's husband, went looking for him thinking he got hurt or arrested the night before. I went back to the hotel with a very broken-looking Abby. We drank and ate food for another hour before I got a text from my brother-in-law saying they found him in a bar and they were trying to talk him into going to his own wedding. My sister rang her husband and heard him in the background. He was literally acting like a 5-year-old who didn't want to go to the doctor. Honestly guys, I had enough at this stage. He messed this girl about for too long, and frankly leading someone along for 18 years is just cruel. So here's where I may be the asshole of the century. I walked into Abby's room and told her to be quiet, then I rang my brother-in-law, put him on loudspeaker and asked him what was going on, then for him to put Ben on the phone. The drunk fool started saying shit like he didn't think she was the one and he is only with her because they've been together too long and he is scared to be alone. I let her hear everything. I won't lie, I felt like a monster when she started crying. Abby then grabbed the phone and told him he had 1 hour to get to the church or it was over for good. Long story short, Ben ended up at the church 20 minutes later and Abby took off her dress then left alone. So he ended up being left at the altar and she went on the honeymoon alone. I've been disowned by everyone except 2 siblings, sisters, and I had to get Abby's maid of honor to collect my suitcase from outside the hotel. Mom dumped it out when she found out. I'm the full blame for ruining their relationship and 98% of my family hates me. Am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for holding my wedding at the same venue as my first husband's funeral?
That's so me. That's so some shit I would do.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh,
let's see. Let's get the
okay.
context. Last summer, my first husband passed away after being in a car accident a month before. The doctors expected him to pull through, yet be paralyzed from the waist down. But he already had health problems and the trauma from the accident ultimately prevailed. I and his parents organized a funeral at a spacious old Catholic cathedral. I kept thinking to myself the whole time, this place is too beautiful for a funeral. For some reason, it felt wrong having such a sad occasion there. I even remember wishing that I had married my first husband there instead of the outdoor wedding we had. Fast forward to early 2022. I reunited with an ex-boyfriend of mine from years before. We started dating again, and
It's always the ex.
They
It's
come
always the one
back.
they told you not to worry about.
And before we knew it, we were engaged. I've been criticized a lot for how fast I moved on, but I guess everyone heals differently. We started planning for the wedding in March. The wedding hasn't happened yet. It will be in May. And we decided that we'd have it at the same cathedral where my first husband's funeral was held. I'm still in contact with my first husband's parents, and they were happy for me when I told them I was dating and when I got engaged. In a phone call, my first husband's mother asked about the wedding, so I said that they could come if they wanted to. She seemed a bit taken aback at first, so I totally thought I screwed up, but she then said she'd love to. Then I told her that it would be held at the same cathedral as my first husband's funeral. And ... She went off on me. I don't know how to explain what happened other than to just write the conversation down. Me. We will be marrying at the blank cathedral. Silence. Her. I just can't believe it. Believe what? Silence. I'm sorry. This is just appalling to me. Me. I want to have our wedding there in honor of first husband. I would have married him there if I knew about the place. Silence. Her. You're moving on too quickly. You need to slow down. Think of how first husband would feel. You can't replace him. You've moved on. You've moved on. Blank first husband's name hasn't moved on. He will never move on.
Because he's dead.
And I'm sure if he were alive, he'd want to. Me, I'm sorry. She hangs up the phone. I haven't spoken to her or her husband since. I'm still planning on having me and my fiance's wedding there, but it just puts a bad taste in my mouth knowing that my first husband's parents are against it. But after all, they aren't involved in the wedding anyways, so I don't see why they should have a say. I wish they'd at least support me because I've been to hell and back. I'm in a better place and they don't like to see me happy. But I also kind of feel selfish since they aren't. Am I the asshole?
Definitely the asshole.
Yeah.
There's a million places you could have your wedding. And like, I understand her like thought process of like, I'm honoring, but I think if that's the way that you're thinking right now, then you're still in one of the fucking 5 stages of grief. You might still be in denial, babe.
Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend she's spoiled and needs to grow up? I met my girlfriend Kate a couple of years ago. We clicked immediately, and shortly afterwards we started dating. We have a very good relationship overall, but there is something that has been bugging me for a while. Our economic status is too different. What a weird thing to say, but go on. Her family runs several stores, pubs, nightclubs, and a hotel. It's not like she's filthy rich, but she's definitely upper middle class. I come from a far poorer background, and my family always struggled to make ends meet during my childhood. Nowadays, I have a job that pays below the average, but my life is pretty decent. Rather than the different economic statuses though, what truly bothers me is how different our perspectives are. Kate is almost like a full-time resident in a hotel, which means the hotel staff pretty much do everything for her. Cooking, cleaning her room sometimes, etc. This drives me insane altogether. She has a house with no maids or staff, but she barely spends time there. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking, and I told her that she needed to stop relying on others so much. She asked what I meant, and I told her that I was really uncomfortable because she seemed too spoiled. She got mad and started arguing. She didn't see any problem in her behavior, while I told her that she needed to grow up because normal people do not have their food cooked just by snapping their fingers. Things escalated, and she asked what was my problem. It's not like I have a problem, but I don't believe you can be an actual adult if you don't do anything by yourself. It's lazy and immature, and in my opinion, not that different from adults living with their parents while they refuse to do any household chores. In the end, she called me an asshole and stormed off. We only talked a couple of times since this incident, but she told me she needed some time for herself to think if she wanted to continue our relationship. She didn't reach out to me yet. Was I the asshole or too out of line? How are you going to make this much of a scene and then say, it's not like I have a problem? It's very obvious you have a problem with this. I feel like I'm being gaslit by you as well. You're the one that's bringing up the issue in this situation, and yet I'm the one with the problem, not you. I don't have a problem with your behavior, you just have problems in general, and I think you need to fix them because you're lazy and immature, okay? Now, let's not break up or anything, I still love you. I just want to say that I despise everything to do with your lifestyle. I get where you're coming from. I do get where you're coming from, but it appears that she may be a trust fund baby. And unfortunately, the reality of life is that life isn't fair sometimes, and sometimes people are just born into these situations, where they get to live as a full-time resident in a hotel with full-time cooking, full-time cleaning, people driving them everywhere. Like, I want to be Richie Rich, but I wasn't lucky enough to be born into that situation. I'm not going to date someone and then berate them for harvesting the fruits of their parents' labor. She can change if she wants to. It's obvious she doesn't want to change. You've been dating for a couple of years, and yet now there's an issue. Why wasn't there an issue a couple of years ago when you first started dating so she didn't have to waste her time with you? I think you're the asshole here. And now in the comments, you're the asshole. Quote, she didn't see any problem in her behavior, while I told her that she'd need to grow up because normal people do not have their food cooked just by snapping their fingers. Some people do. She does. You're uncomfortable with her being able to afford what you can't, which is neither her fault or problem. Agree with this. OP could possibly feel emasculated or insecure, but it's something his girlfriend can't control. As far as this post tells, girlfriend doesn't complain about OP, so why does he get to have a complaint about her lifestyle? Her money, her lifestyle, her choice to continue living this way. If OP can't handle this, then girlfriend may be on the right path to rethink this relationship. Actually, there is a term that the Chinese say, which literally means knocking at the wrong door. It's usually used on two people who are not a good match in social standing. The girlfriend is right to evaluate their relationship. There is obviously a gap in OP and girlfriend's social status. Mostly, it is not something two people who live or plan to live together get over with. I would suggest OP reevaluate their relationship as well, because this will surely be the cause of many more future conflicts, especially when they decide to have a life together. OP is the asshole, by the way. If you're uncomfortable with your girlfriend's standard of living, that's a you problem. There is no reason why she shouldn't enjoy luxuries such as cleaning and cooking services if she has the means. You're the asshole. I'd be effing pissed if any man told me to fire my cleaning lady or stop sending my laundry out or stop getting food delivered because they simply could not afford the same or to live the same lifestyle. I absolutely know how to cook and clean for myself, but my time is worth more to me than the money it costs to pay for those things. Right here. It's worth it to you to have someone else take care of those things so that you can use your time otherwise. And it would still be worth it if you were just lazy and could afford it. If I could afford it, I would certainly have hired help with all manner of housework. Past, present, and future injuries, the type that needs surgical repair every few years, are my main reason. But I'll confess, sometimes I'd just like to be lazy and F off in bed all day. And now, on to the update. Hi guys, this is going to be the only update. After reading all the comments on the original post during the afternoon, the judgment was pretty unanimous. I was a raging asshole. I dumped all my insecurities on her and spouted some very hurtful things for pretty much no reason. Not only that, but I fully admit that I was really idiotic refusing to see ahead and thinking my opinion was fact. I called her, asking if we could meet later, and thankfully she agreed. I apologized and she decided to break up with me. We talked for a while and things got very emotional. I realized that not only had I been a huge asshole, I had also deeply hurt her. At some point, this went far beyond a different perspectives or different social classes problem and escalated into me attacking her for something that wasn't objectively bad. Also, trying to control something that had nothing to do with me, and again, thinking I had the absolute truth. We said goodbye and will probably be going no contact once things actually settle down. I think I'm going to stop meeting new people for a while until I can figure out my own problems. Some commenters mentioned that it was only a me problem, and I'm inclined to agree. Either way, I think I have to thank all of you for opening my eyes. I wasn't just an asshole, I was the asshole. That is all. Now in the comments, no kidding, you just defined why the poor stay poor. Sociological studies show that it's part mentality and part dealing with the trauma of being poor. The world is not fair. Some have much more than others, and how the rest of us deals with that is what is important. Did you ever consider that maybe your experiences have taught you more of what life is about than hers? Don't feel too bad for her. And OP replies, I'm not sure. To be honest, she's got a pretty complicated life herself, and things didn't really get better until the last few years. I struggled more economically, while she struggled in other parts of her life. I guess it's not better or worse, just different. That was probably the best outcome. Sounds like you both got some closure on the relationship, and now you have time and more perspective, so you can work on your insecurities. Good luck to you both. It's nice to see a poster actually self-reflect. It's best that you broke up as you aren't compatible. This is why you should date in your own socioeconomic groups. Objection, I don't agree with that, but I can see where you're coming from, though I don't agree. Who's to say I can't date a rich older woman, okay? You can't define me, Mr. J the Penguin 48. You think she's lazy and entitled because she can afford people to pay for chores. She isn't. She doesn't want to do them and can afford not to. Your feelings stem from jealousy. I do hope you get therapy. Imagine if everyone acted with that kind of insight when faced with criticism. Lots of people do, but those usually won't make good stories, so you don't hear about them so often. They're also rarely the leaders of our society. Ain't that the truth? This one ultimately ended for the best. Sounds like the dude has a lot of issues to work out on his own, and his ex didn't need or deserve to have that sort of negativity thrown at her. Still, kudos to OP for actually listening to people calling him out and realizing that yeah, he really was an asshole. I found that there aren't a lot of people willing to do that. Hey, whoa, I came here for an unbiased perspective on how I did nothing wrong. Average am I the asshole? I love when they're clearly holding back crucial information or have clearly tried to phrase things to make the other person look unreasonable, but it's still clear how they were the only raging asshole in this situation. It also makes me wonder about the rest of the relationship. He stated that they dated for a few years. I wouldn't assume one single argument would end that long of a relationship, so I wonder what other bad behavior he'd been exhibiting toward her. He seems pretty hung up on the difference in the economic statuses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he'd been making little digs at her the whole relationship. Precisely. I had a boyfriend like this throughout my 20s, and he was always making snide remarks about our differences. Well, not all of us grew up with XYZ, or whatever. I didn't recognize it as an insecurity at the time, so I took it quite personally. Eventually, he cheated with someone that he could better relate to, and that was that. Don't you just love happy endings? Our next post is titled, Neighbor Says She Saw My Husband Cheating. So my husband comes home late most of the time. He usually has many meetings. However, his schedule is flexible, so sometimes he'll come home earlier. A couple of days ago, I was out shopping, and when I came home at around 4, he was there. I didn't think anything of it, and just spent time with him. Yesterday in the evening, my neighbor and I were going for a walk around the neighborhood. While talking, she asked me if I knew. I was so confused, so when I pressed her further, she asked if I knew my husband was cheating on me. My heart quite literally sank at the thought of it, but I didn't believe her. She reassured me and said that being married to a man like him comes with infidelity, and that she has been through the same thing. Once the original shock is over, I'll come to terms with it. I was so confused because she still hadn't given me any proof of my husband cheating, and I got angry that she was just accusing him of things. She then told me that a couple of days ago, at around 11, that day that I went shopping, my husband brought a girl over to our home in his car, and a couple of hours later, the girl left in a different car. She said that from her view, the girl had a similar body type to me and looked around my age, but she had blonde hair. I was and am shocked. I couldn't continue the walk and I went home. My husband came home shortly after. I wish I was better at keeping a straight face, but I just couldn't. He repeatedly asked me what was wrong, but I didn't tell him. He said that he'll get it out of me eventually. The neighbor has always been so sweet to me, but this morning after telling my best friends about it, they believe that my neighbor is lying. We have 2 security cameras that show the driveway of our house. The only problem is that the app is on my husband's phone. He's always extremely transparent. I can go on his phone at any time. I don't check through it, I just search things up if my phone is dead and stuff like that. But if he is cheating, he probably wouldn't let me go on his phone. My husband is huge on loyalty, and he is really possessive over me, so I don't understand how he could be cheating on me. When we're out, he never looks at other women. He isn't even friendly to waitresses or anyone like that. He's always said that I'm his exact type, and I have dark hair. He has always been all over me, but I'm not going to be one of those delusional wives. Do you think he's cheating? If he is, I will leave him no questions asked. Please give me your honest opinions and advice. I am 22 female, and my husband is 34 male. The neighbor is 35 female. And now in the comments, Would your neighbor have any motivation to lie and break up your marriage? Why do the security cameras only go to your husband's phone? We had a couple of security cameras and they're linked to both of our phones. And at least with our security cameras, the app only keeps 3 hours of recordings. If it's past that, it disappears. And OP replies, I don't think so. She sometimes asks weird questions about our relationship, but I think she is just trying to bond with me in a way. We're pretty new to the neighborhood. I know it sounds stupid, I never really thought to download the security camera app. I'm not sure if it'll have the recording of a couple of days ago, but I still think I should try looking. You can Google the type of camera you have and see what the storage time is before you ask your husband to see them. And OP replies, thank you. You can tell him the neighbor saw a suspicious car at your house. Don't make it about cheating, so you want to review the footage. If he has any resistance, I think it's time to keep a close eye on him. Check first. Ask your husband after. If he is actually cheating and you ask him first, he will delete every evidence that there is. Also, you should have access to the security camera as well, and him being possessive over you isn't a sign of him not cheating. It's actually a bit of a red flag. I'm not saying believe her immediately, but if there is a chance that he is cheating, you should check first. People can cheat while holding your hand, and you can't even tell. Hopefully, your neighbor is wrong. And OP replies, thank you for this, and I'm leaning more towards trusting my husband, but I don't want to be delusional whatsoever. Hopefully she is. Look first. If he is, he will delete and deny. You want to trust him, but if your gut is telling you different, you have your answers. You can have the most amazing husband, but can be blindsided. Trust me on this. Look first, don't ask him. And now onto the update. My neighbor lied. I have no idea why. Update 1. He just read the message and responded with the login info. Time to see. Update 2. 30 minutes later. I can't describe how relieved I am. I'm still crying for some reason. I downloaded the app and logged in. Rightfully so, most of you said that the footage would probably be deleted for that day. However, it was still there. Because there was nothing to hide. At around 11:06 a.m. on July 7th, you see my husband pull into our driveway. He exits the vehicle alone. There was no blonde. The only other car that comes to our house is mine at 3:50 p.m. I want to update you guys on what happens with the neighbor, but I think I'm going to delete this account. I am so disgusted. I don't know why she would lie to me like that. I'm disappointed in myself for doubting my husband, and I hope he doesn't get angry with me for not trusting him. Update 3, 4 hours later. Most people won't read this, but I just want to put it here. My husband has been worried since last evening, since that was when I started ignoring him, and he said that he will get it out of me eventually. Today he has called and texted me numerous times between his meetings to check in on me, but I ignored everything. When I randomly asked for the login, I guess he got even more worried. An hour and a half ago, he just decided to say F it and come home, even though he still had work to do. I was so scared that he would be mad. When he came home, he was visibly angry and worried. I just told him the truth. I know I wasn't supposed to. Many people said to lie about it, but I just couldn't. I then apologized for not trusting him. He wasn't even angry anymore. He just looked hurt and sad from that crazy. And OP replies, she is a blonde, but the thing is, her body is nothing like mine. Do you still think she was still talking about herself? In a way, since my husband didn't act removed from your life. That's an easier cancer to cut out. Maybe try to use this as a lesson that maybe you just need more general communication in your marriage. I don't mean that in a bad way. My wife and I decided that together, and not because we were fighting. We started talking more and more, and our relationship grows and strengthens daily. Best of luck to you, OP. Hang in there. And OP replies, you're right. Thank you. I'm relieved for you, OP. I suspected as much because it sounded like she already believed your husband was a cheater, and the facts didn't matter to her until you pressed her on her beliefs. I probably don't have to tell you this, but you should cut contact with her. She's too interested in your relationship, and it's very, very weird that she knew enough details about your lives to be able to come up with this lie in the first place. She knew that you weren't home that day, and she knew roughly when your husband got home. My guess? She's probably the resident pot stirrer and latched onto you because you're a newcomer and everyone else already knows what she's like. And OP replies, I know. This, added on to the questions about how often we have sex and if he gives me affection after, is so creepy. I definitely won't confront or do anything unless he's there, because if he is, then she won't be able to hurt me at all. I really don't want to confront her. I just wish I could avoid. I would honestly never talk to her again. That's not really something you can walk back. And let me guess, she doesn't have many friends around the neighborhood? And OP replies, I don't really know. She actually said to me that most of the women in this neighborhood have experienced the cheating, which means she must be somewhat close to them. I just want to move areas because I never want to see her again, but I obviously understand that's not really possible. And yeah, I won't talk to her again. Or she's the weirdo neighbor that has broken up multiple marriages by lying to the wives. What a terrible neighbor. I believe it though. My mom had a friend who took great delight in telling my mother that my dad has been seen multiple times with a blonde in the passenger seat of his car by her. She even noted the times and places that she had been behind him in her car. Small town. It was our family golden retriever. He liked to sit up in the front passenger seat like a human. Anyway guys, that's where I'm going to leave you today. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down below, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Am I wrong for making a joke about my brother's divorce? My wife, Elle, and I have been married for a year now. Back in the day, Elle worked as a sports model. Her job required her to meet a very rigid beauty standard and look a certain way. She was always on a strict diet and was severely underweight. Since then, she's gained a healthy amount of weight and muscle and is much happier. My brother Chris is wealthy, like extremely wealthy. He's done well for himself and seems happy about where he is in life. He just got out of a nasty divorce with his ex-wife and has asked to stay with me for a few weeks as he moves into his new place. Chris, to put it simply, has a type. He believes that every woman should subscribe to his type. Any woman who doesn't fit his preference is automatically ugly and unlovable. He wants all women to conform to his standards, hell or high water. 2 days ago, Chris found some of Elle's old magazine covers and commented on how beautiful she was back then. It's a harmless comment, sure, but he kept bringing up how much she's let herself go. I mean, kept bringing it up. Elle goes for a run every evening, and as she was heading out the door, Chris told her to run fast enough to lose all the I gotta read it again. Run fast enough to lose all the flabby bits. She rolled her eyes and laughed it off, but I told him to shut up. The next day when Elle went to the gym, he told her to make sure to return to her old figure. Again, I told him to shut up and stop fixating on my wife's body. Despite all of his comments, Elle is a little unfazed by all of it. She says that she's used to it. By the end of the day, I was completely exhausted from listening to him. I was at my end, but Elle again brushed him off with a smile and with a laugh. When Elle served him food, he made a joke about paying for her tummy tuck so that I can marry the right version of Elle. The right version being the skinnier version of her. That comment set me off. I told him that his wife married the wrong version of him and to pack his shit and leave my house. He did not take kindly to this and complained about how insensitive I was to his situation and how I made a low blow. He eventually left, but Elle tells me that I could have kicked him out without the comment. So am I the asshole? Am I wrong for expecting my girlfriend to pay for my birthday dinner? The birthday person never pays for their own meal, just putting that out there. This birthday was the first that I have celebrated with my girlfriend. We have been dating for 7 months now. For my birthday, we had planned to go to a pretty nice restaurant. She didn't get me any presents or surprises. I won't complain about that though. I enjoy presents, but understand that some people just don't care to give them. Because of this, and since it was my birthday, I expected her to pay for my meal. I almost always pay for her meal, so I figured for this occasion that it would be flipped. We go to the restaurant and ordered our meals. The waiter finally asked if this was going to be together or separate. Before I could say anything, she blurted it out together. I assumed that this meant that she was going to be paying for both of us. I smiled. Oh my god, I feel so bad. I feel bad for him. I smiled and we then had a nice dinner. When the check came, it sat closer to me. I left it there for a few seconds expecting her to grab it. She never did and instead got on her phone. I got it and put my card in and paid for both of us. I was a little confused and kind of sad, but I didn't want to say anything yet. When we were on our ride home, I asked her what my surprise was going to be. If she says some tacky shit like, my present is a present, am I not enough for you? I'm going to rip my hair out. She said, it was a nice dinner that we just had. I was like, yes, it was nice, but I paid for it. I didn't know that counted as a surprise. She said, well, yeah, it was because normally I wouldn't want that, so letting us go there was a surprise. I explained to her how hurt I was that she didn't do anything else and how I had to pay for both of us on my birthday. She told me to get over it and that I'm not a kid anymore. She said that I was being rude for even bringing that up. I think actually, no, I disagree. I think good for you for being able to bring that up and like not stow it down. Now you know that she's a complete bitch. So was I being rude and an asshole for expecting her to pay and bringing that up? Am I wrong for not telling my dad that I had a baby? For context, I, 28 female, have never been close with my dad, 66 male. My parents got married super fast and had 3 kids in 5 years. Then their relationship started to deteriorate, but when they were about to separate, my mom accidentally got pregnant with me. So they tried to make it work, but they failed and my dad left when I was 3. He got an apartment about an hour away while us kids stayed with mom. Because my dad left when I was so young, I never properly bonded with him. For the first couple of years after he left, I didn't really want to spend time with him because I was upset that he left. This made my dad unsure what to do with me, so he gave up trying to have a good relationship with me quickly. Growing up, I only saw him when he came to visit my siblings and we never spent any time alone together. He moved to another state as soon as my siblings were all 18 and has never invited me to visit. Meanwhile, my sister gets a plane ticket to visit him every year. We got into a fight 2 years ago, and since then, I have given up caring about our relationship because it obviously means more to me than him. Now, onto the actual story. I had my first baby last November. My dad has texted me a couple of times since I got pregnant, but it was always a one-off text that didn't really segue into me telling him about the baby. Plus, I wasn't rushing to tell him anyway, because if he hasn't been a good father, then he's not going to be a good grandfather. I wasn't actively trying to keep the baby from him, but I try not to think about him much because it upsets me. However, yesterday my dad came to visit. I knew he was coming, but he wasn't supposed to come until today. He'll only be here for a couple of days, and I wasn't planning on seeing him anyway because I'm busy this weekend. But last night, my husband and I were at my sister's house babysitting her kids and had our daughter with us. That's when my dad showed up a day early. He's staying there with my sister and was surprised to find us there with the baby. Once he got over his initial shock, he took me into another room and got mad at me for not telling him about his granddaughter. I was annoyed by this, so I told him he wasn't really ever going to know her anyway because he doesn't really know me. Then he told me I was a selfish bee for not even giving him the chance to know his granddaughter. I started getting mad at him until my husband heard and came to stop us before the situation got worse. I haven't talked to him since, but he texted me about how hurt he was, and all of my siblings texted me that I was a jerk for not telling him about the baby. However, they all talked to him regularly and they never told him I had a baby either, so he obviously wasn't asking about me. But even my mom, who doesn't like my dad, thinks I'm in the wrong. My husband is on my side, but he's the only one who actually understands how complicated my relationship is with my dad. I know I shouldn't have lashed out at him, and I regret that, but am I the asshole?
My boyfriend got another girl pregnant and I don't know what to do. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months now. I've fallen more in love with this man with every passing day. I love everything about him, but we've run into some problems recently. Big problems. One day he comes at me with the classic, we need to talk. That's when he told me he got another girl pregnant when we went on a trip to LA a little before we became official. He explained that she's already 7 months along and she just decided that she wanted him to be there for the birth and for him to be in the baby's life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and I was silent for a few minutes. He just sat there saying how sorry he was with his hands covering his face. I love him so much and I don't want to lose him, so I told him that I understand and I would be willing to help him raise the baby. I said we could go shopping, get a crib, diapers, whatever we need to set up the room for a baby. I told him that it was okay and that we'd figure it out together. I was sure he would be relieved and thrilled, but his face said otherwise. He looked even more worried. I asked him what was wrong and what he said next really shocked me. He explained that he grew up with his parents separated and hated having to spend time separately with his mom and dad. He said his whole childhood he wished his mom and dad were still married and they could all just live together. He went on to say that he promised himself he would never make his kid feel that way, so he wants to try to make things work with a girl in LA for the baby's sake. I was gutted. I felt like everything was falling apart before my eyes. I thought this was going to be the guy that I was going to marry and be my forever. I wanted him to be. I tried to convince him that we could make it work and that this kid would have a good, happy life. I convinced him for hours and he finally said to let him think on it. That was a month ago. Since then, I've still been living at his house, sleeping with him, cooking for him and everything. But what's really bothering me is that he's been going down to LA to get things ready for the baby's arrival, or so he says, and is staying at her house for 3 nights each time. He still hasn't given me an answer if he's going to stay with me or move on and try to make it work with the other girl. I'm trying to be patient and give him time to think, but I can't shake the feeling that he's just using me until he's ready to leave and move to LA to start his real family. What should I do? I married my husband 3 years ago. He was divorced and previously widowed. He has 2 daughters, Annie, who is now 26 from his first marriage, and Amy, who is 17 from his second. My husband told me about his late wife, his ex-wife, the issues they had in his blended family when he remarried, and Annie was not on board with him remarrying, and the fact that this strain ended his second marriage. He was also honest that Annie never forgave him for remarrying and never wanted to do anything with Amy or him after she turned 18. What he didn't tell me was the major role he played in all of this. I found this out 3 weeks ago at dinner with his extended family. The story as I know it, when Amy was around 5 years old, she took a special interest in a necklace that belonged to his late wife. My husband gave the necklace to Amy, which upset Annie because all of her mother's possessions were meant to go to her. My husband told Annie that it was just one item and she needed to get over it because Amy was entitled to have something too. Annie had brought up that it was a piece her mother wore the most. My husband told her it was a special gift to give to her sister, that she was being selfish. His ex-wife told her that her mother would want someone as special as your sister to have a piece of her as well. Annie never got over it. She tried to take it from Amy and was punished. The last time she saw any of them, she told them all to go to fucking hell. Amy still has the necklace too. She's let it get into a bad way and talks about it as if her dad bought it for her. I was shocked. I would have never expected my husband to be that way. He was very unapologetic about it and told me that Annie would have to get over it someday. I told him that he should be ashamed of himself, that he should have allowed Annie's mother's possessions to be her to do with as she chose, and that Amy did not give a crap about his late wife or the significance of those items, but Annie would have. I told him that he would be incredibly lucky if his daughter ever speaks to him again and that I would not blame her if she never did. He was furious that I judged him. His family said I should take my husband's side over his daughter who I don't even know, except for the nephew and niece who told the whole story because they also think my husband did a fucked up thing. Am I the asshole for telling my husband that he should be ashamed of himself for what he did?
Am I the asshole for not leaving when a girl my girlfriend hates showed up? I am very curious to know everyone's thoughts on this. I went to an event with some friends and this girl Carly, who my girlfriend Kenzie hates, showed up, and apparently I was supposed to leave after she was there. The plan was for me and a group of friends to do something, but Carly wasn't supposed to be there. But she heard from a mutual friend that I was going to be there and invited herself with them. She wanted the chance to get to talk to me without Kenzie around and says that Kenzie probably told me a bunch of lies. She said that that's why I avoid her, but Kenzie has always been an over-exaggerating and dramatic person. Am I the asshole for not leaving when a girl my girlfriend hates showed up? She says she doesn't see a reason the two of us can't be pals, except for me having a controlling and jealous girlfriend. This would be the time to put her in her place, but he says whatever, I was friendly to her and everyone else there had a good time. My girlfriend was upset at this, and apparently I was supposed to leave after Carly showed up. She said she only did that to get under her skin, and she only acts nice around me, and that she's actually a backstabbing person. That's the PG version. Now I'm thinking my girlfriend may be a tad dramatic.